I'm still at the firm. The clock's hour hand points to 11 p.m. Thunder outside crashes like the bottled-up fury in someone's heart, rattling through the glass walls. The computer's still running. The desk is buried in case files. My fingers pause on the keyboard for a second, and my eyes, without meaning to, drift toward the corner of the desk. What is that? An old, yellowed book, tucked among the stacks of documents. No one brings something like that into a modern law office. The Art of Tactical Command. I whisper the title aloud, my fingertip brushing the cover. The feel of the ancient paper sends a jolt through me. I open it. The pages begin turning on their own. One by one. Until they stop at the very center, a single blank page. I frown. That's not right. Before I can think further, a silver-white light seeps through the seams of the paper. Like a living thing, it creeps inch by inch up my wrist, my arm. I jerk back, but there's nowhere to retreat. Is this book glowing? I whisper, a chill rising from my gut. Outside, lightning explodes. The entire floor goes black. Lights out. Screen's dead. Only the book is still glowing. Then I feel it. A pull. I look up, and an indescribable force is tugging at me, peeling me upward from my feet. My body feels weightless, like I'm drifting in water, but there's no resisting it. I try to call out, but there's only air in my throat. Who's doing this to me? Let me go. Do you hear me? My voice vanishes into the void. In that instant, a silver character like a seal, presses itself onto the center of my forehead. My eyes fly open. Time begins to shatter. The entire world splinters like broken glass. I feel myself being taken apart, unraveled. And then, darkness. I'm falling. No rising. I open my eyes. The law office is gone. Now I'm suspended in a weightless, glowing void. No floor. No ceiling. My body floats in a nebula of silver-white energy. Around me, ancient characters shimmer in the air: strategy, rebellion, heaven, soldier, light. I gasp for breath. And realize I still can breathe. This isn't a dream, I whisper. The wind, it's real. The breathing, it's real. It starts to dawn on me. This isn't a hallucination. It's not a breakdown. It's a summoning. Why me? Who chose me? I don't know. But if this really is a choice, then I choose to survive. The wind in my ears began to feel real. It was as if something was gently cradling me, slowly lowering me down. The light shifted from pure white to soft amber, blurring into a gentle morning mist. I felt the touch of a soft quilt, a wooden bed, and the sunlight filtering through a paper window. I opened my eyes. I was in a room of antique elegance. Wooden walls on all sides, a water basin and medicine bowl by the head of the bed, and a faint herbal scent lingering in the air. I looked down at my hand. The sleeve was pale green, wide, and embroidered. My fingers were slender, pale, and delicate. Not mine. My heart skipped a beat. I reached up and touched my forehead. The sigil was gone, but a faint heat still pulsed beneath the skin. Just then, the curtain lifted. A girl in pink robes entered with a bowl of medicine. She looked about 15 or 16, round face, bright eyes. When she saw me awake, her face lit up. "Miss, you're awake." I stared. "Are you talking to me?" "Of course. You're the fourth miss of the Sua family. Don't you recognize me? I'm Kui Er." She placed the medicine on the bedside table, smiling with relief. "Sua family fourth miss," I said nothing. I lowered my gaze to the bronze mirror beside the bed. The reflection showed a gentle, refined face with a cool, distant air. Completely unlike the one I knew. This was who I was now. I've transmigrated. Before I could think further, the sound of a distant bell rang out. Kui's face changed instantly. "Miss, you have to get ready quickly. The third prince is arriving soon. Master said you must go greet him immediately." "The third prince?" I frowned. "You're getting engaged to him today. Don't you remember?" Her tone was innocent, like she was stating the most ordinary fact. But I understood. I had become the fourth miss of the Su household. And this me was a pawn. Meant to marry, to welcome royalty, to serve as a bridge in someone else's political game. Slowly, I clenched my fists. This wasn't my choice. But it was now my reality. I stood up, staring at the unfamiliar but determined face in the mirror. If fate wants to place me on a chessboard, then I'll flip the entire game. I put on the pale blue robe embroidered with cranes, the official attire granted to the fourth miss of the Sua family. The reflection in the mirror wasn't a stunning beauty, but she held an air of quiet depth that was hard to read. I didn't ask Kui'er anything more about the third prince. He would tell me himself. As I stepped out of the inner chamber, the corridors of the Sua estate were eerily silent. Beaded curtains on both sides swayed gently, the breeze slipping through them like a pair of invisible eyes. Crossing through the front courtyard, voices began to reach my ears. Kui'er trotted ahead of me to lead the way, glancing back and whispering, "His Highness has been waiting in the front hall for a while now. Master received him personally, and the first madam is also." I didn't respond. My steps remained steady as I ascended the welcome steps of the Sur residence. Inside the front hall stood a man in royal purple, his back facing me. Tall and poised, a golden crown on his head, his presence calm yet commanding. Su Tingfang father stood respectfully at his side, his expression tense. The room held its breath. Not a single servant dared move. I looked at the man's back. So this is the third prince. Even before he turned around, his aura was a force of its own. I stepped forward one step, two. "Su Wan, daughter of the house. I apologize for being late." My voice was soft, yet unwavering. The third prince turned. He appeared to be around 25 or 26. Sharp brows, piercing eyes. His gaze cut through me. Not with kindness, but the cold scrutiny of someone inspecting a product. I looked him directly in the eye. "No fear. You're the fourth miss of the Sua family." His voice was cold and detached. "I've heard His Highness dislikes fanfare. So I thought, this kind of entrance might be fitting." My tone was even, unshaken. He raised a brow, perhaps surprised by my reply. Su Tingfang quickly jumped in to smooth things over. "Your Highness, do forgive her. My daughter has always been frail in health, and her temperament is gentle." "Whether I am gentle?" I turned to my father, meeting his eyes. "You would know best." The air froze. The third prince looked back at me, and the corner of his lips curved just barely. "Interesting." He said it quietly, then turned to leave. "I have other matters today. We'll speak of the engagement another time." And with that, he left behind a room of stunned silence. And a speechless Su Tingfang. I didn't chase after him. Nor did I bow to send him off. I simply stood there. This engagement was no longer just a political arrangement between the Sua family and the royal house. They would come to learn. Even a pawn can choose how it plays the game. After the third prince left, the front hall felt utterly hollow. Su Tingfang's smile froze on his face, as though he'd forgotten how to maintain his kind father facade. When he turned to me, his expression had shifted from flattery to something cold and hard. What kind of attitude was that just now? I lowered my eyes, my tone respectful but fearless. I only acted in accordance with the family rules, father. If there was any impropriety, please enlighten me. He paused, caught off guard by my answer. The memories of this body were hazy, but I knew enough. The original Suwan had been a neglected concubine-born daughter. Her mother died young. She had no backing. Her name didn't even make the first 3 pages of the Su family's genealogy. But today she had returned. Su Tingfang let out a cold snort and stormed off, sleeve flicking. The first madam sat off to the side on a cushioned chair, sipping her tea. She glanced at me with mild disinterest. You've just woken up, and your complexion's looking rather fine. But someone like the third prince. If you don't know your place, you'll pay for it sooner or later. I met her gaze with a faint smile. Thank you for your guidance, First Madam. I said the word guidance with deliberate calm. A flicker of surprise passed through her eyes. She looked like she wanted to say more, but in the end, she simply set her teacup down, smiled, and left. I exited as well. As I walked back through the corridor toward the inner residence, Kui followed behind me like a little bird, her voice low and cautious. Miss, that third prince just now. He didn't seem easy to deal with. Aren't you afraid? I looked straight ahead. Sunlight streamed through the lattice windows, casting perfectly measured patterns of light and shadow on the floor. Would being afraid change anything? Kui stopped in her tracks, startled. Then I'd rather. I said softly, like stating a long-set truth, make him afraid. Kui's mouth opened slightly, but all she managed to say was, Miss, you've changed. I didn't reply. My gaze drifted toward the deepest part of the Su estate. This place wasn't just a home. It was a chessboard. And I was no silent, disposable piece. I would take my position. Starting today. The morning mist had not yet lifted. I stood beneath the covered walkway of the Su residence's main courtyard. A breeze stirred the wind chimes under the eaves. A soft, clear tinkling sound. I had Kui help me change out of the crane-embroidered formal gown. Instead, I wore a simple grey-blue robe with short sleeves, and tied my hair into a lower bun. I no longer looked like a young lady of the Su household, but rather a quiet servant of the inner court. Who did your mistress usually talk to? I asked Kui. She blinked, then replied, usually just me. You've always been unwell, miss, rarely left your room. Except when the first madam sent physicians. Even second miss, rarely visited. I nodded. Isolated. No mother. No power. No close sisters. No one who cared. How many madams are there in the Su household? I asked calmly. 3, miss, she replied quickly. The first madam is the legal wife. She's Miss Su Ning's mother. The second madam came from outside the family and gave birth to young Master Su Mo. The third madam is the youngest, but she has no children. 3 wives. 4 branches. Children from all sides. A house like this must be rife with factions. I held the teacup in my hand, my finger slowly tracing the rim. So am I, considered part of the first madam's household. Kui lowered her voice. Miss, you were born to a concubine. You're not attached to any madam, really. You lived far away due to your health. None of the ladies paid much attention to you. So in short, I had no roots. But that wasn't a disadvantage. No one cared, which meant no one watched. No one supported me, which meant no one controlled me. People like that. They move fastest when they finally do. I'd like to go for a walk. Kuier jumped in surprise. Ah, but miss, breakfast hasn't been served yet, you. I'm not hungry. I stepped out into the open corridor, heading toward the Sui family's library. I didn't need idle gossip. What I needed was records. Context. The kind of knowledge that revealed the soul of this era and this country. Books are cleaner than people. Just as I rounded a corner, someone collided into me. Ah! Tea splashed. Soaking my sleeve. I glanced down, then up. And found a girl in red robes standing before me, clearly displeased. She looked 17 or 18, strikingly beautiful, her eyes filled with disdain and surprise. Fourth sister, you actually came out of your room. My chest tightened slightly. So this is Su Ning, daughter of the first madam, the rightful heiress of the Sui family. I raised my head and smiled faintly. Yes, sister. You're right. I'm feeling better. If I don't come out and look around, people might forget I exist. She frowned. Your tone, it's different. I took half a step back, brushed the tea off my sleeve, and kept smiling. Nearly dying changes a person. Not changing now, that would be strange. She stared at me, her gaze sweeping from my sleeve to my low bun. Her contempt wasn't even hidden. So what gave you the nerve to come out today putting on this whole, quiet act? I tilted my head, looking at her self-assured face. Did you pave the paths in this courtyard? Strange. I didn't see your name carved on the walls. Her expression darkened. But she quickly lifted her chin. Fourth sister's gotten quite the sharp tongue. Almost like a different person. Was it the third prince who made you so proud? I smiled. And even I could tell how cold that smile was. I said less than 3 sentences to him. And you already know I'm proud. News travels fast in the Su household. A flicker of unease flashed in her eyes. But she turned away, flinging her sleeve. A lowly concubine's daughter, mocking me. Let us see how long you last. She stormed off, her steps faster than when she arrived. I didn't follow. I simply wiped the smile from my face. And continued walking toward the library. Su Ning carried a heavy sense of entitlement. She wasn't relying on beauty or talent. But on her mother, the first madam. But I could tell. She wasn't confident. The library was empty when I entered. Tall wooden shelves were packed with classics and histories. Along the back walls were records, family notes, and duplicates of civil office documents. I made my way to the farthest corner. And pulled out a stack of old volumes wrapped in thick cloth. The one at the bottom had lost its cover. Inside were hand-copied writings, the ink faded to yellow. In the corner was a note, 13th year of the founding emperor, inner command of the Imperial Guard, draft of Tianzhao, private copy. Tianzhao. My heart skipped a beat. I flipped through it quickly. Most of it was fragmented, unclear. But one line stood out clearly: strategy is not only for war. It is the power to shape destiny. This wasn't just a military manual. It was a doctrine on sovereign control. I carefully tucked the pages into my sleeve. This wasn't a book of tactics. It was a record of who had the right to wield imperial command. Now I understood why it appeared before me. If fate threw me into this game, this was where my counterattack would begin. When I returned to the inner court, the sun was already high. I hid the fragmented pages beneath a hidden compartment under my bed. Quick and quiet. Kui'er entered, carrying breakfast. She saw my serious expression and asked softly, "Miss, are you feeling unwell?" "I'm fine." I looked into her innocent eyes. "Just thinking." She knelt beside me, gently wiping my hands. Her voice dropped even lower. "Earlier, in the front hall. The things you said. Master and the first Madam won't be happy." "They already weren't." I smiled. And even I could hear it. It wasn't joy. It was clarity. They want me to be a pawn. To sit, kneel, stay silent. To wear the red wedding robe and be gifted to the prince as a decorative companion. I paused, looking at Kui'er. "Do you think I'm that kind of person?" She blinked, then whispered, "No, you're not." I nodded. "You're right." I walked over to my desk, took out brush and ink, and laid out a sheet of the Sua family's writing paper. I scribbled a few vague family notes, carefully mixing in words like military strategy, secret edict, cloud decree. Then I slid the page into an old book, and returned it to the second shelf of the library. Not too deep, not too shallow. Easy to find. This wasn't the original Tianzhao manuscript. It was bait. I needed to know. Who was interested in this? Who would reach for it first? Back in my room, I told Kui'er, "From now on, if anyone asks where I've been, or what I was doing, tell them I had a fit, started rambling, and insisted on reading ancient immortality scrolls." But, what if? Just say it. Then we'll see. Who believes, who doubts, and who gets nervous. I removed my hairpin and sat before the bronze mirror, staring at the reflection of the woman I now was. "Remember," I said quietly, "I didn't come here to visit." I whispered to the mirror. "I came to settle the score." Night had just fallen. Outside the Sua family's library pavilion, the osmanthus tree swayed gently in the breeze. Moonlight scattered through its leaves in a dappled hush. As if even the night was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I sat alone in my room. The window was left open, the light dim and flickering. Kui'er had been sent away. Deliberately. This was the gap I had prepared. Sure enough, before the hour of midnight arrived, I heard it. A faint sound, woven into the wind. Footsteps. Not the steps of a servant, nor the casual pace of family. No, this was the movement of someone used to the shadows. I put on a robe and stood up. No candle light, only the moon to guide me, as I moved silently to the outer corridor. The door to the library stood slightly ajar. Someone was inside. I didn't enter immediately. Instead, I circled to the side wall and peered through a carved window screen. A man stood there. Tall, lean, dressed in night black clothing with his face covered. He was rifling through the very book I had returned earlier that day. His movements were swift and practiced. He didn't take the entire book. Just the forged page I had planted. My chest tightened. He believed it. I turned and moved to the corner of the courtyard, calculating his exit route. When he slipped out of the library and stepped into the corridor bend. Exactly where I expected. I spoke. "What you're looking for, isn't on that page." He froze. "No sword drawn." No attempt to flee. He looked up and saw me. I stepped out from the shadows, slowly approaching him. Who sent you? The Yunzhang army, or the third prince? He didn't answer. But he didn't deny it either. He stood there, slightly angled, assessing if I posed any threat. I stopped a few paces away and met his gaze. Tell your master this. The real strategy isn't in the book. And it's not in the fragments either. A beat of silence. Then he spoke. A low, steady voice. Then where is it? I smiled faintly. In my mind. He stared at me for 3 seconds. Then he turned and left. Quick as the wind. I didn't stop him. I just stood there. And watched him disappear into the night. I knew he would report back. And starting tonight, his master would begin to see me. Not as a pawn, but as a variable. I wasn't afraid of being watched. What I feared was being unprepared to become the center of attention. So from this moment on, I would act. I would take the initiative. Let them all see, this silent piece on the board was beginning to move. The next day, just before noon, a sealed decree arrived at the Sur residence. White paper. Gold thread. An emblem of a white crane etched into the wax. I didn't open it. Just one glance at the official's embroidered sleeve and the ceremonial blade at his waist told me. This wasn't an invitation. It wasn't a request. It was a summon. The third prince wanted me in the palace. I remained silent for a moment, then said to Kuier, prepare the carriage. The entire Su household stirred. The first madam appeared personally, insisting I wear the newly tailored crimson gown. She claimed it was for my benefit, but she couldn't hide the calculation and suspicion in her eyes. The third prince has shown you favor, Wan Er. Don't forget your place. I lowered my gaze in a respectful bow. Thank you for the reminder, madam. I walked through the long, straight corridor of the Su estate. No gift boxes in hand. No trace of fear in my eyes. The carriage entered the palace grounds. Outside the Jingyang gate, someone was already waiting. And I recognized him. Feng Xiao. The third prince's personal guard. Cold-faced. Silent. A war-hardened man who once pulled faces off corpses in the battlefield. He wore a whip at his left side. He led me straight to the Yongqing Hall. The prince's private quarters before his title was formally conferred. The chamber was stark. No incense. No music. The space of a man accustomed to detachment. He sat behind a low desk, cloaked in deep violet, spinning a gilded bone flute between his fingers, his gaze lost in the golden shadows of maple leaves outside the window. Su Wan, he said quietly. Like he was testing the name, or confirming it. I offered a bow. Not kneeling, just a formal salute. Your Highness. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he tapped the desk 3 times. Feng Xiao withdrew, leaving only the 2 of us in the hall. The page you left yesterday, well played. I met his eyes. It wasn't the original. But if it's enough to stir thought, it's enough, he said, setting the bone flute back onto its stand. Then his gaze shifted, resting fully on me. I need someone overlooked. Someone who can investigate the CE case inside the Ministry of Revenue. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked, why not send one of your own? Because they're too clean. He could see what kind of person I was. Someone who already touched blood, and wouldn't flinch to touch it again. You trust me? He gave a short laugh. No. But I'm willing to hand you the sword. And see who you choose to strike. I nodded. Then turned and walked out of the hall. This alliance was dangerous. But I knew one thing, only by stepping into his game could I ever hope to overturn the board. On the third day, just past noon, I dressed in a pale moon-white robe and entered the Ministry of Revenue holding the third prince's secret token under the title of a newly appointed auxiliary officer. The minister himself was absent. Instead, I was received by an elderly clerk with a white beard. His tone was cold, and his eyes were filled with doubt. The fourth miss of the Sui family. Investigating the ministry's accounts that has never happened before. I met his suspicion with a calm smile. The records of the ministry should not distinguish between the highborn and the humble. He said nothing more, but ordered someone to escort me into the archives. It was an old, narrow building, crammed with moth-eaten volumes and yellowing ledgers. Dust blanketed everything like snow. I had everyone leave. Alone, I began to search. I knew what I was looking for. Not the surface-level accounts, but the ones that had been hidden. By early evening, I finally found an anomaly. Buried beneath rows of waterworks expense reports, I uncovered a suspicious entry. For 12 consecutive months, logistics subsidies for the Yunzhang army had been labeled temporarily deferred. No trace of follow-up. No investigation. No penalties. One faint annotation caught my attention: funds disbursed. Not applied to military stock. Sealed in case file, Jusin archive. Jusin. Just as I was about to dig deeper, a soft cough came from behind me. I turned sharply. And found a slender young man standing there. He looked no older than 17, but his eyes were sharp, observant. He gave a polite bow with a slight grin. Fourth miss, the Jusin archive you're looking for. I have it. I kept my expression composed. And you are? Ren Yu, he replied. Deputy record keeper here. Grew up in this place, breathing dust. I know which page has mold just by the smell. He handed me a sealed folder, lowering his voice. Over the years, many didn't want these things found. But I remember your mother's watermark notes. You have the right to know. My fingers trembled slightly as I accepted the file. My mother. I had never imagined that. In this cold and bureaucratic place, someone still remembered her handwriting. Ren Yu spoke softly, this isn't just about you. And it's not just about the third prince. This is about the entire military sector. Being swallowed, slowly, by a pair of eyes. I looked into his gaze. Not youthful, but weathered. I knew then. He had been a witness to the same game of power. And now, he had chosen to be my ally. I took the folder and nodded. I'll restore this ledger. He smiled faintly. I just hope you're not too late. I sat in the study, flipping through the Jusin archive page by page. Every watermark bore traces of my mother's handwriting. Delicate and composed, yet laced with warning. 2 pages were sealed with minuscule wax tabs, nearly invisible. I pried them open. Inside were just 6 words: Yang faction. Left door of minister. I straightened in my seat. Yang faction. One of the most secretive yet powerful forces in the current court. It descended from the legacy of Grand Minister Yang Xiyuan, and had long embedded itself within the ministries of personnel, revenue, and war. Never openly tied to any prince. Yet deeply entrenched in the very core of resource control and personnel appointments. I tucked the note into my inner robe, changed into dark clothing, and once again slipped into the Ministry of Revenue. Tonight, the moon was absent. Only a single patrol lantern flickered in the rear courtyard. I moved by memory toward the chamber left of the minister's quarters. The archive for sealed confidential files. I had just unlocked the second drawer of the hidden cabinet, when a hand emerged from the shadows, gripping my wrist. I whirled around, meeting a pair of eyes as deep and still as a well. "You," I whispered. It was the same man who had once infiltrated the Soul Library. He released my wrist. "That's my question for you. Are you with the Yang faction?" I asked. His voice was cold. "No. But I'm watching who they're watching." And I understood instantly. He was the third prince's man. Or more precisely, a soldier of the old guard, loyal to command, not to faction. "I'm tracing their money flow," I said. He nodded, pulling a flint lamp from his sleeve. Its glow revealed the bottom row of the cabinet. And a ledger titled, Yan'an Infrastructure Addendum. It was from 3 years ago. An unfinished public works project. On paper, the funds had been spent. In reality, the project was never built. "This was the Yang faction's first bite," he said. I took the ledger, eyes falling upon the approval stamp, Deputy Minister of Revenue Zhang Ningchuan. I let out a soft, mirthless laugh. He nodded at me just 2 days ago in the courtyard. The man studied me for a long moment. Then quietly said, "Su Wan. If you play this game, there will be no one left to clean up after you." I tucked the ledger into my robe. "I won't need them." I turned and walked away. Not a trace of hesitation in my steps. This game. I wasn't here to observe. I was here to settle the accounts. I knew the Yang faction wouldn't sit still. And I knew Zhang Ningchuan would probe before he struck. So I made the first move. I deliberately handed a sealed letter to an outer clerk of the ministry. On the surface, it was addressed to the third prince. But the contents were fabricated. It claimed, "Su Wan intends to bribe a deputy minister of revenue." The name obscured, mentioned only as a certain gentleman from Nanting. That very night, the letter was intercepted. Just as I intended. By the following evening, I received an invitation. The signature read, "Zhang Residence, Nanting." And the closing was succinct, "A conversation by night." I dressed plainly, blending into the streets, and went alone. Outside the Zhang estate, there were few lanterns. The servants wore black veils. No one spoke. I was led straight into a refined chamber. No announcements, no pleasantries. The tea was already steeped. Curtains hung low. Zhang Ningchuan sat behind a bamboo table, hands clasped neatly over his knees. "Fourth Miss Su," he said, without greeting. "You're bold." I didn't sit. I looked him in the eye. Anyone timid would ve already knelt back at the Sur residence. He chuckled. "You want to investigate the Jusin accounts? Do you even know who approved them back then?" "You did," I answered, without hesitation. For the first time, his eyes narrowed, truly taking me in. "So you've come to negotiate." I sat down, pulled the sealed duplicate from my sleeve, and placed it gently on the table. "This copy is your life, not my leverage." He didn't touch it. Instead, he asked softly, "What do you want?" I met his gaze and said, clearly, "I want you to switch sides." He frowned. I added, "Not for me. For yourself." He studied me for a long time, then finally said quietly, "I've always been on my own side. I just never had anyone make the other side feel safe enough to choose." I nodded. "I'll give you the opportunity and the cover. But in return, you give me the Yang faction's other shadow accounts." Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, he nodded. And in that moment, I knew I'd taken one piece off their board. On my way back to the Suo estate, I looked out at the moonlight reflected on the river. Today's game wasn't about winning. It was about making them misjudge my bottom line. And my real target hasn't even entered the board yet. It's time the Empress's people met me. 3 days later, an edict came from deep within the Forbidden City. 4th Miss of the Suo family shall be appointed as Inspector of the Ministry of Revenue, responsible for investigating the former military budget of Yongnan. It was an earth-shaking decree. Women were barred from holding posts in the Ministry of Revenue by ancestral law. But the position of inspector, though technically auxiliary, granted powers to review documents, question officials, and pursue accountability. All of the capital was stunned. But I knew this was not the work of the third prince. This was the Empress. Or more precisely, the Emperor himself. I did not request an audience. Instead, I received a slip of paper, no seal, no signature. After Shen hour 3:05 p.m., Springwater Pavilion, west of the Imperial Garden. Someone will be waiting. I arrived on time. The pavilion was empty, but the tea was warm. A woman in purple robes sat by the water, silent. Behind her stood a palace maid, eyes like blades. The mark of a trained killer from the inner bureau. I bowed. "Su Wang greets your grace." The woman lifted her gaze slightly. "Do you realize you're walking a tightrope?" I replied, "Walking a tightrope is still better than staring up from the bottom of a well." She raised an eyebrow. Clearly not expecting that answer. "The Empress knows you're investigating the Yang faction," she said. "And she knows you're probing on behalf of the third prince." I didn't deny it. "If this is a game," I said, "then I'm the piece willing to be played. If someone dares to wager, then I'll move." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "If you can secure Zhang Ningchuan's full confession, the Empress is willing to ensure your family remains protected." I shook my head. "That's not enough." "What do you want, then?" I looked out at the water. "I don't want the Suo family protected. I want the Suo family to repay its debt." "What debt?" "The one owed from betraying the court. Only by repaying it can we earn the right to be reborn." She studied me for a long moment. Then, softly, she laughed. "So, you're the kind who refuses to run." I said nothing. She rose to her feet, leaving behind a final message: "Before the Spring Offering Festival, you will be summoned to the throne room. This time, the Emperor will question you himself." I watched her leave. Wind rippled across the waters before the pavilion, circle after circle of disturbance. This game was no longer just a contest between princes. It was the very foundation of the empire being rewritten. The Spring Offering Festival, a grand annual rite of the palace, held to honor the heavens and deliberate on state affairs. Traditionally, only 3 ministries were questioned within the court. The Ministry of Revenue was rarely summoned to speak. But today was different. At the stroke of noon, the bronze bell rang 9 times. I entered the Hall of Supreme Harmony Zikan Hall. Alongside the Minister of Revenue, dressed in full court attire, the inspection seal at my waist. Eyes searched like a tide. Hundreds of gazes pinned themselves to me. At the highest step sat the emperor, adorned in imperial robes. His presence commanded without fury. "Su Wan," he called. "No title, no honorific. Your servant is present." I stepped forward 3 paces, kneeling with calm dignity. "Have you investigated the Yongnan military fund case? Preliminary findings are complete. Speak." I rose, unfolding the long scroll in my hands. My voice was steady and deliberate. "This case spans 3 years, with the funds flowing to 3 fronts. First, false engineering reports in Yan'an. Second, fabricated accounts by Outer Palace merchants. Third, collusion between Deputy Minister Zhang Ningchuan and the Yang faction to siphon funds." An uproar swept through the court. Zhang Ningchuan's face turned pale. The emperor did not rage. Instead, he asked, "Your evidence?" I raised my hand. An attendant brought forward the sealed dossier. Zhang's personal confession, with comparative engineering documents, verified handwriting, and official seals. The emperor reviewed it for a long moment. Then, with a sweep of his sleeve, he descended a step. "Zhang Ningchuan, do you acknowledge this account?" Zhang collapsed to his knees, his voice hollow as a funeral bell. "This minister is guilty." The emperor's tone turned cold. "Strip him of rank. Seize his seal. Hand him to the court of judicial review." The hall fell silent. Not a single official spoke. I lowered my head, prepared to withdraw. When the emperor's voice rose again, "Su Wan, your servant is here. Had it not been for you, this case might have taken 3 to 5 years to uncover." I said nothing. The emperor continued, "If given another ledger, would you investigate again?" I lifted my gaze, meeting his eyes. "May your majesty give the command." He nodded. "You are hereby assigned to investigate the internal treasury. There is suspicion of irregular payroll within the Frost cavalry camp under the third prince. If you find the truth, you shall be conferred the title of Strategic Inscription Officer." Gasps rippled through the hall. Strategic Inscription Officer. Not a hereditary post, but a direct imperial appointment. Equal in authority to a military advisor. Bestowed only by the emperor himself. I bowed low. "I accept the imperial command with reverence." As I withdrew from the hall, my fingers trembled slightly. It was not fear. It was the clarity of knowing. From this day on, I no longer stood on the chessboard. I was the one holding the pieces. The seal of the Strategic Inscription Officer had yet to be formally conferred, but at dawn the next day, I arrived at the outer grounds of the Frost Cavalry Camp. This unit was officially under the Third Prince's command, but in truth, it had been rebuilt by the Grand Tutor's former personal guard. Its discipline was ironclad, sealed off like a fortress. At the gate, Commandant Su Wei blocked my path. Without the imperial seal, no external personnel may enter the Frost camp. I cupped my hands in courtesy. "Su Wan is here under imperial command to audit grain rations. I have no intent to pry into military matters." Still, he did not move. It wasn't until late afternoon, when a personal decree from the Third Prince arrived, that the gates finally creaked open. As I stepped inside, I entered another world. No soldier in the Frost Cavalry uttered a word. Their drills moved in perfect, mechanical unison. The tents were arranged like battle formations. Even in silence, the air bristled with latent killing intent. The ration ledgers were kept in the eastern wing of the central encampment, managed by 3 seasoned clerks. They handed me the records for the past 5 months. All appeared neat and in order. Except for one line that caught my eye: Frost East Infantry, first squad rations for 20 men. But the actual roster listed only 17. Where are the other 3? I asked. One clerk hesitated. Possibly reassigned. Or transferred. No record was kept. I frowned slightly, flipping to the next pages. There, the night assault unit's ledger was missing signature verification. The imprint was a single character, Xiat. I remembered it. It belonged to one of the third prince's personal guards, Xialing. This wasn't a clerical error. This was deliberate. I immediately submitted a written report and sent a sealed note to the third prince. It contained only one line: Xialing is missing. Possibly involved in classified movement. Later that night, the third prince summoned me to his private quarters. Beneath the lamp's glow, his face was somber. You've gone too deep. I asked, is there another system within the Frost camp? He fell silent for a moment. Then said, within the Frost cavalry, there is a unit known as the Shadow Riders. They have no official roster, no recorded identities. They act only on imperial orders. Xialing was one of them. Now that he's vanished, I asked, was his life taken? Or his loyalty? The prince gave a bitter smile. That's what I want to know, too. I rose to my feet. If I can trace his whereabouts, I'll need one thing from you. The recorder's writ. It was a rare token, granting access to the movements of the Imperial Guards. He was silent for a long time. Then finally said, in a low voice, I'll give it to you. But remember, this is the last time we exchange trust. I nodded. If I fail, I won't ask a second time. I knew. If I misstepped here, I'd either fall or be discarded. But if I chose right, then from behind the veil of the military, I would drag out the deepest shadow hidden within the Emperor's heart. With the recorder's writ in hand, my first move was to track Xialing's whereabouts over the past 3 months. But in all military logs, his name vanished after the spring season. The final signature he left was beneath a roster titled, Northwest Camp Emergency Supply Deployment. The Northwest Camp. The Empire's most remote and desolate military zone. Rumor held that it was the site of the failed Serpent Rebellion years ago. I did not inform the third prince. Instead, I brought 2 trusted envoys and rode straight there. Beyond the camp's gates, sandstorms sliced like knives. Within the barracks, soldiers looked at me with cold, unreadable eyes. No one offered to guide me. So I searched alone. I combed through the storage quarters and missing personnel ledgers. It wasn't until the third night that I found it. Buried among tattered records and abandoned tents, I discovered Xialing's mark. A wax-sealed emblem, reversal sigil. Its meaning was clear. He had forsaken the Emperor's command and pledged himself to another master. My fingers turned cold. When a Shadow Rider defects, no one files a report. No ledgers are amended. Because they were never officially recorded to begin with. This matter could not be made public. I returned to the capital under the pretense of irregularities in military provisioning, and reported to the third prince. He sat silent in his study, saying nothing until I had finished. Then he asked, that reversal mark. How many times have you seen it? This is the first, I said quietly. He looked up at me. I've seen it 3 times. I froze. He continued, now you understand. The flaw in the Shadow Rider system. It didn't come from outsiders. It came from another deck of dark pieces, controlled by the Empress. And at last, I understood. Those unnamed orders. Those unsigned missions. They came from a covert force beneath the Empress's command. The off-ledger Palace Guard. Officially created to protect the court. Secretly used for silent assassinations. Xieling was a discarded piece in her game. Then who do I investigate next? I asked. The third prince's voice tightened. Look into the embroidery bureau's name registry. If someone was quietly moved within, that's where the defect began. The embroidery bureau. The Empress's personal female official system. A place few could ever touch. I turned to leave. But he stopped me. Suwan. This is not a trail to follow to the end. Just follow it. To the edge. I looked back at him. If your highness fears it, then I'll walk it alone. He lowered his gaze. I don't fear it. I only fear you won't have a way back. I said nothing. Because this road was never meant to turn back. Under the authority of my inspector's seal, I requested access to the Embroidery Bureau's personnel registry. The chief eunuch hesitated for a long time, before reluctantly granting permission. On one condition, I would have only half an hour at noon to review it. The Embroidery Bureau was housed in the west wing of Zhaoning Palace. Outwardly modest, but inside an intricate labyrinth. The registry was divided into 9 tiers, each corresponding to a different level of embroiderer rank. At the top there was only one name, Mianqing, the first embroiderer. I flipped through the pages, comparing them with recent military supply lists and silk seal records. And finally, within the third tier of embroiderers, I found 2 names that stood out. One was faded almost to invisibility, clearly scrubbed and re-entered. The first, Lan Jian. The second, a blank space. Just as I leaned in to examine more closely, the soft creak of the door, and a calm voice rang out behind me. Why would 4th Miss Su be so curious about our little embroidery bureau? I looked up. A woman stood there, dressed in deep indigo embroidered robes. Her long hair was bound by a silver hairpin. Her eyes were downcast. Her expression serene, but cold. Mianqing, first embroiderer? I asked. She smiled faintly. I wouldn't dare claim such a title. I merely keep the records, as commanded. I closed the ledger. Do you know why the name Lan Jian is so blurred? She replied smoothly, perhaps the ink has faded with time. Or perhaps she was never meant to exist. And if someone not meant to exist appears on the ration list for shadow riders, what then? Mianqing paused. Then softly answered, then someone has used a court embroiderer as a piece on the board. Who moved that piece? I asked. She gave a cryptic smile. If you truly wish to know, you should speak to the silken registrar. The Ling Si frowned. That was the chief overseer of embroidery registries. A post equivalent to the imperial inspector of the inner court. He is not of the Empress, Mianqing said, her voice suddenly colder. He is of the previous dynasty. Thunder cracked through my mind. With that one sentence, the entire embroidery bureau turned from a quiet archive into a palace of hidden embers. I rose and left. But just as I reached the door, Mianqing spoke again, her voice low, almost a whisper. 4th Miss Su. You had the courage to come in. But you may not have the life to leave. I didn't look back. But I knew. From this moment on, what I was investigating was no longer just ledgers. No longer just soldiers. I was uncovering the deepest secrets of the empire's inner court and its buried past.